What does it really take to run payroll for multiple businesses? And what are the key skills you need to do it? This is Behind the Button. Hello and welcome to Behind the Button, the podcast that really lifts the lid on what goes on behind the scenes in the world of pay. I'm Laura Murphy, the CIPP's content editor, and I'm joined today by somebody who's going to talk to me all about the ins and outs of heading up an outsourced payroll team. Welcome to the show, Sam Johnson. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Laura. Fabulous to be here.
So, on Behind the Button, we ask our guests to leave a parting question for a future guest, and you've got a really interesting one. So, if the next generation needs to unlearn something in order to succeed in the workplace, what would that need to be?
It's a very tough question.
Sorry, Sam. I told you we'd ease you in gently, but we really haven't.
I don't know whether it's necessarily unlearning things, but ultimately, as time moves on, younger generations very much into sort of communication online, social media, you know, all of the apps and things associated with that. And I think it's the importance of building a really strong network and spending time with people in person and actively listening and learning in that environment rather than always operating in a hybrid way. You know, we all jump on Teams calls, we all access webinars, we all access content online, but making sure that there's also that value there for in person and spending time with people as well as just content.
Yeah, I think it's that thing of, you know, sometimes we are in danger of sending multiple emails when in reality we could just pick up the phone and something can get sorted much quicker. I think it's keeping that human relationship alive, even in the world that we live in that is very technologically driven.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do 100% agree with you on that point, Sam. And I think it's really important. And particularly in your role, which we'll come to shortly, which is all about sort of building relationships with clients. So on Behind the Button, we really want to get to know the people behind the role. And I know you're absolutely dreading this bit, Sam, but you are fantastic. And I want to dig into who Sam is outside of being the payroll partner at Dains. So we're very privileged to have you here today. I'm sure you'd much rather be on a cruise ship somewhere out in the world. And I know that you've been on some absolutely fantastic holidays. I follow you on Instagram. I get to see all your wonderful stories. I'm never jealous, by the way. So if you could pinpoint just one holiday that you've had that changed your world, what holiday would that be? Where did you go?
Oh, just one is really tricky. I suppose I've got to say my most recent one. So my mum retired at 66. She was 66 this January, just turned. And 2 years ago, we talked about a trip for her. So we looked at all different things. She was looking at round the world cruises and all different options. And in the end, she settled on Australia. So she did 3 back-to-back cruises, doing the Great Barrier Reef, going to Tasmania and to New Zealand. And around about a week after she'd booked all of them, I invited myself.
Of course you did, Sam.
So yeah, me and my husband basically joined her for the New Zealand leg. And we loved it. We had such a good time. We did a bit of exploration around Sydney, stayed at a few different places, the more residential side. We stayed at the zoo there and the more touristy side in the rocks. But just exploring New Zealand was fab, and doing it with my mum as part of her retirement was just lovely.
I was going to say that is absolutely, you know, an amazing destination, but also sharing that with your mum, that must have been really special.
Yeah.
And I know you were gone for, was it 3 weeks?
Yes, 3 weeks. It was, oh God, it just felt like forever. It really did. It felt like forever. I still feel like I'm catching up. I definitely am still catching up, but yeah, it was lovely. It was a good chunk of time to properly explore spend some good time together. Obviously, the cruise helped because we jumped around lots of different places. So yeah, it was good. It was good.
I never forget when I first met you, Sam, because obviously we've worked together in the past. You were trying to sell cruises to me because I'm going to be honest, it's not something that really floats my boat. Excuse the pun, sorry. But I remember you like saying to me, cruises are the thing to do, Laura, you've got to go.
Absolutely.
I'm yet to still go on one, sorry. But someday maybe.
But the day you do, you're going to come to me and tell me, Sam, especially you've got kids, like best kids clubs ever, off they go, play all day long, and then you can just enjoy what the cruise has got to offer.
Outside of work as well, I know that you're a dog mom. And you are very fond of your doggies, who are beautiful. So tell me a bit about them. So what are their names? What are they like? And who rules the roost at home?
So we've got River and Nettle. River is a Cocker Spaniel. She is almost 11 and absolutely rules the roost. And we've also got Nettle. She's a Bedlington Whippet. She is 6 this year. I just love my dogs. I love dog walks. I love the Lake District and disappearing off up there for a few days with them and, exploring the countryside and just spending a bit of time outside. But River is definitely the one in charge. She's got a new habit at the moment. We've recently moved house. And her favourite thing to do is to knock on the door at night time because Nettle's taken her position on the bed. So she wakes us up in order to move Nettle. And we're soft enough to do it half the time.
Aww. And I know that sort of your love for animals shines through when you were my manager back in the day, when we were looking at overhauling the magazine. I wanted to do Payroll Pets, and I know that you really encouraged me with that, and it was such a lovely initiative. I mean, that went on for a couple of years, and we were never short of people sending in their furry and feathered friends. And I think, pets really help with well-being, which at the time we'd just come out of the back of the pandemic, and I think that really shone a light on the beauty of spending time with pets. So yeah, your love for animals shines through. So I want to talk a bit now about payroll, and I want to take it right back to the start. So we often talk about falling into payroll, and I am somebody that is one of those people, unfortunately. I wish I chose. I do say the important thing is that I stayed. But what about yourself, Sam? Did you go looking for a career in payroll, or did payroll find you?
I think for me, it was a mix of the two. So historically growing up, I always wanted to be a lawyer, went to university and did a law degree, and very quickly decided that probably wasn't the path for me. There were elements that I really enjoyed, and ultimately things that I've been able to apply to a payroll career now. But when I came out of university, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. So having spent a bit of time reflecting, I was thinking about a few different options, and I started studying towards an accountancy qualification, just very generically thinking that that's something. I used to enjoy maths at school, so I'm bound to enjoy accountancy. So I was working for the police at the time in a civilian role, and basically an opportunity in payroll came up, and it was within finance. So in my head, it just went, well, finance is accountancy, so payroll must be linked in some way to that. Perhaps I can shuffle across. So I chose the payroll role and moved into that. And ultimately, I got some fantastic support from my manager there, from the team there. They very quickly put me onto the CIPP foundation degree to start to get the technical skill set. So it just made absolute sense to stay, and I never pursued any move outside after that.
Yeah, I think a key theme we see in payroll roles is that there is a lot of support for people, which I think is one of the lovely things about our industry. You always have people that are there to help you. If you want to go far in a payroll career, I think that there are options to do so. And we do hear lots of amazing stories about mentors, about managers, about more senior people in organisations pushing people to take that career and to embark in qualifications. So that's a similar theme that we hear quite often, which is lovely.
Yeah, and I think I've seen it in a number of roles that I've been in where, you know, if you are hungry enough for it and you show that interest in the technical elements and the complexities that sit behind payroll, then yeah, I've been very lucky to have some great mentors to support.
Yeah. You have also spent some time in human resources, or HR as we frequently call it. So talk to me a little bit about what happened there, and what you enjoyed about being in more of a HR focused role.
The role that I was doing, that sort of worked with HR. So I looked after the payroll team at JCB, and we were bringing in a new payroll system. So I essentially was left to go and lead on that. I ended up carrying on looking after the payroll team, but that's a side story.
You couldn't keep away.
Couldn't keep away. So when we were doing the system build, it was a HR and payroll system. So we were looking at the organisational structure, all the policies and things that then would attach to that. So it would manage all the rules around sickness and absence and things and push that through to payroll as well. So there was a real crossover in that project between HR and payroll in creating that system. And I worked really closely with one of the HR business partners in getting that system over the line. So once that system was all up and running, it just made absolute sense that I shuffled into a role that was then looking after the HR shared service team and the payroll team, because that administration element that was going in at the front end was ultimately impacting the payroll team as they were doing their process. So covering that full end to end was just a natural progression as part of that system implementation. So it was really interesting because I got involved in looking at, you know, more around contracts of employment, that full end to end employee life cycle. But yeah, the HR administration side of things is it just goes hand in hand.
Yeah, and I was going to say, do you think that sort of that HR experience and perspective then helped you in more of the payroll space?
I think there's a natural overlap. There is a natural overlap. You know, you can't talk to somebody about, I don't know, going off on maternity and just talk to them in isolation about pay or in isolation about what that, you know, time off looks like or anything else. So it helped to have a more, I suppose, rounded view of what the employee was going through and the things that impacted them throughout all of our policies and all of our processes, really.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because I think we're seeing more and more that payroll is sort of part of an employee experience. So it's not just them getting their pay slip at the end of the month and their money in their bank account. Obviously, that's a huge part of it. But there is this whole experience that the employee gets from their payroll department. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if you've got people that are well versed, like you say, in both payroll and HR, then they can give that almost 360 view on certain elements, which I think is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
So your current role, you are now payroll partner at Dains. Mm-hmm. So you often deal with sort of smaller clients as opposed to your bigger sort of payrolls that have staff numbers into the hundreds. So what does that look like day to day when you're dealing with those sort of smaller clients and have a portfolio of those clients?
Yeah. So we specialise in SMEs. At Dains, and ultimately that can be anywhere from just a director only company all the way up to sort of 400 or 500 staff on the payroll or more, and it's a very, very different environment to operating, I suppose, in-house or in those larger bureau environments, because ultimately we're dealing with owner managed businesses 9 times out of 10. And the expectation there is slightly different. You're not talking to a HR team or a payroll person that's just delegating out to different regions. You're talking to somebody that runs that company and that works with those individuals every day, that's probably employed the individual sitting in their company. So they immediately care about the outcome. They really care, but equally they know they're not specialists in that. So they're looking to you to really be proactive around the support and advice that you're giving them, because ultimately they know that they have some areas that they just don't necessarily have awareness of or visibility of, and they're looking to you for that level of support.
So is that sort of the biggest difference that you've seen, the level of support that you need to provide when you think about working in an in-house environment as opposed to a bureau space?
I think it depends on the lens that you're looking at it from. In-house, your stakeholders, your customers are employees and queries that come directly from them, and also your your internal stakeholders, like your senior business leaders, your business partners, etc., that will be looking for reports and information, finance, that kind of thing. And they will already have a level of knowledge and understanding for what they want and what they need.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're working with a business that is, I don't know, started at 5 employees 6 weeks ago, and in 6 months' time they intend to have 30 employees and growing beyond that, then the kind of questions that they're going to have are potentially going to be brand new to them. I've got someone who's just told me they're going to be having a baby and it's the first maternity leave that they're going to go through, or they want to understand what the employment allowance is and whether or not they have a level of eligibility for that. And it's making sure that you're bringing these things to their attention so that they can make a decision. They're still employers and they will always make decisions as employers should, but it's about providing that support and guidance to give them the visibility of what kind of things they need to be considering when they're making those decisions.
So I guess it's almost being more proactive and giving that sort of further guidance and advice. Absolutely.
I mean, one of the things we've done really recently is to start some webinars in conjunction with our employment taxes partners, and just talking about little snippets of things, H rate national insurance for apprentices. I had a call with somebody who said, never heard of that before, wasn't aware of it. We've got 2 apprentices. We've just saved 10 grand. So, it can make a real difference just bringing that stuff to their attention.
Yeah, I think it's great that you're running webinars and things like that. What a great way to support your clients. Have the clients been receptive to that and attended?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been, what have we done now? I think we've done either 5 or 6 since the end of last year. But yeah, we've had a good mix of clients, of people that aren't currently clients of Dains, and yeah, some good questions come in as well. We always love a curveball question that keeps us entertained. But yeah, it's been really well received. I've had some really positive feedback.
So just out of curiosity, what have those webinars been on? You mentioned national insurance.
Yeah, so we've talked about pensions and auto-enrolment and how that links into pension salary sacrifice. We've talked about changes in statutory sick pay.
Huge one.
Absolutely, massive. God, what else have we done? We've done, I think we've done some off payroll working, or that's coming up next. I forget.
I'm putting you on the spot. Sorry, Sam. I was just interested to see sort of what areas smaller clients need that guidance in. Which brings me nicely to sort of the next thing I wanted to ask you about. So when you are taking on these smaller clients, what's their typical perception of payroll when you first onboard them?
It really does vary. It really does. And one of the things I like to do is to sit and have a call You know, it could be 15 minutes, it could turn into an hour, but just having a call, understanding a little bit about that business. It never fails to amaze me, the volume of businesses out there, and, you know, the different areas that entrepreneurs go into and specialise in. So just understanding what is it that they do, what are they delivering, and then asking a few questions around how that payroll operates. You know, is it predominantly fixed? Is it salaried? Is it hourly? What kind of pay elements have you got going through? Because you could have a 5-person payroll that is actually really quite complex and lots of different things that need to be processed within that payroll. Or you could have a 100-person payroll that's nice and straightforward and it's mostly just salaried and you know, and fixed in a way. So until you start to get under the skin of what's happening within that business, what their cut-off dates look like, what their benefit structure looks like, what pension they're operating, all of those questions, then you can't really gauge their perception of you either. So sometimes it will be, you know, a 5-minute conversation of, it feels really straightforward, hand it over to you and we run with it. Other times clients will know that, you know, it really is much more complex and there's much more detail that needs to go into it.
I think that's what keeps payroll so interesting though, right? Like every single organisation needs a payroll. They need to pay their staff. So, you know, there are lots of different payrolls that need to be run, different things that go through. And I think, like I say, it's making people outside of the industry aware of that every organisation needs a payroll. And, you know, it can differ from organisation to organisation.
Yeah. And I think it's, you know, it's that whole sort of journey that employers go on. It might be a global mobility question. We're seeing quite a few of them come through at the moment where people are wanting to either work abroad and still work for the UK entity, or ultimately they're looking at setting up shop more further afield. It might be that they haven't got a salary sacrifice scheme and they're thinking about how can they bring that in? What does that look like with the changes that have come out of the budget more recently? So there's all these sort of things that come up as things hit the headlines or as life changes for individual employees. And until they hit those milestones, it's knowing what questions to ask, really.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating how what's going on in the wider world will then directly impact how we process payroll. And it's certainly something that keeps us on our feet. You mentioned the budget there. Love a good budget day.
You love a budget day, don't you? It's like Christmas for you, isn't it?
You're making me sound like a geek. But yeah, I think, you know, people outside the industry don't necessarily realise that things like that do have a direct impact on our roles. And I find that exciting because it means that we don't ever just get to rest on our laurels. There's always different things to consider. And when one thing changes, I always talk about the domino effect in payroll. So it probably doesn't just change in isolation. There are probably other areas that then impacts on as well. So lots of sort of things that keep roles in pay interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do see constant change, don't we? I think the Employment Rights Act, that's
huge,
going to continue to create change. Obviously, talking to clients about SSP, etc., and the budget changes around salary sacrifice, payroll and benefits in kind. You know, there's all of that we're having to constantly respond to within the industry, and it can be tricky. Yeah.
So when you speak to clients, again, I appreciate that this might vary from customer to customer. Do you see that sometimes they underestimate the complexity of payroll?
I suppose a simple answer, yes. I do see that being underestimated at times. But I suppose part of that just comes from a place of, you know, we can't all be experts in everything. So it's being able to ask clients the right kind of questions to draw out if there are complexities, because there are plenty of payrolls out there that, you know, are just salaried or hourly paid or whatever, and And as long as we've got the mechanisms around that, the systems and the processes to support it, then we can build a process that feels straightforward to the client. But as an example, I spoke to a client quite recently who basically moved from one system to another. In his mind, very, very straightforward payroll. He runs it in-house. He's quite happy to do so. But when he did that change, he didn't realise the RTI numbers were different from the payroll number. So he didn't keep the unique RTI number. It ended up duplicating payroll records for everybody.
Oh, no.
So it was a load of work to unpick that. So often what can feel and seem really straightforward, unless you have that underlying knowledge, it can create issues and complexities that you just don't have that awareness of. And that's why you've got to get really good at asking good questions when you work with clients and different businesses, because unless you ask the right questions, you won't find out what's really going on under the surface.
Yeah. So you've mentioned asking questions there, but I know a big part of your role is also providing guidance and support to your clients. So how do you explain payroll risks in a way that resonates with business owners?
First and foremost, it's really important not to be tempted down that sort of scaremongering route and unnecessarily overcomplicating things. I think, I've always been a person that tries to avoid the jargon, try to avoid over complexity around it. But I think it's back to the asking questions piece. It's starting to help them understand the kind of things that you've seen in the past that might have gone wrong. So things like pensions tax relief is something we see quite regularly that can be set up wrong, and we identify that during the onboarding process so that we can fix it and get it right going forward. Asking questions around employment allowance, around the apprenticeship levy allowance. Quite often we'll talk to clients and they'll talk about a £3 million pay bill, but appreciate there's an allowance that sits behind that obviously if there's multiple companies, that has to be split to make sure that it's operated correctly. So it really is talking through the whole onboarding process, talking about all the different examples that could impact them. And one of the things I've spoke a lot about recently is just where you hold data.
Yeah.
The number of people that have still got a laptop that they're running payroll off. And if that laptop, has a cup of coffee spilt over it, then that's it. They've got nothing. So it's not just the compliance element. It is who's running your payroll. Where does that data sit? And all the data security around it. I think GDPR was such a hot topic for so many years that we've strayed away from it and almost gone, oh God, let's not talk about that again. But actually, it's still a fundamental of what we do. So making sure that clients are thinking in that way as well is really important.
I really like that response, Sam. I think it's really important that we don't scaremonger people, which it is quite easy to veer into that territory because the financial risks associated with payroll errors and the reputational risks as well can be quite steep. But I like what you're saying there in terms of you highlight the risks that are there so that people are aware, but you don't sort of put the fear of God into them. So I think that's really important. And again, it's not just about compliance in the way that you might first think about it. It's about the practicalities, like you say, of where you're keeping data, where you're processing your payroll. So I think all of that is really, really important to consider. So have you seen a real shift in a client's attitude towards payroll since you onboarded them?
I think for me, I value every client relationship. And one of the things I do really enjoy is that whole pre-engagement onboarding process, because inevitably you talk about any challenges that they've got at the moment, the reason they're looking to outsource elsewhere. And then ultimately you can get that feedback as to how we're doing, how's the process been for you? What have we been able to improve on your side and within your business? So I wouldn't necessarily say sort of huge perception changes, but it's that feedback where you have clients that say, actually, you've just saved me, half a day a month or half a day a week, or even that example I gave earlier that someone had said about, we've just saved 10 grand because we've got apprentices and we weren't using category HNI. So I think that kind of feedback where you can see it's getting a real life impact on a business is what's really rewarding.
So you're seeing sort of the tangible benefits of what you're offering as a service, which is fantastic. And I think given the current economic climate, things like saving 10 grand is absolutely massive to businesses, and potentially the difference between staying afloat and going under for some of the smaller employers. So it's great that you're able to help in that way. So within your team, how much would you say, like percentage wise, how much would you say their role is processor versus educator when dealing with clients?
A big chunk of their role is going to be reactive. They're going to be processing payrolls on a regular basis. They are going to be managing, multiple client portfolios, and it takes a lot of organisation and a lot of really good time management to deliver all of that. And what I talk to the team about is really building those relationships up with clients, because it might be that for 6 months it is just the processing of the payroll and the exchange of data and reports, etc. But when that question comes in, or when that change comes in that you need to flag, actually that doesn't look quite right, or why are you asking me to do this? Why is this expense of £1,000 going through? Is that genuinely an expense, or do we need to explore that a little bit more? It's them knowing the client and having the relationship there in order to flag that to them. So it'd be difficult to put a percentage on it, because it will vary day by day. It will vary client by client. There might be some months that you are just inundated with the queries and the weird ones, and some of the team will say to me, oh God, it's one of those months, I'm just getting bizarre queries left, right and centre, and some of the months will just feel a lot more straightforward and the process led stuff. So yeah, sorry, dodge that percentage question then.
I didn't think you'd give me a concrete percentage, to be fair. But yeah, I want to stay focused on the team at the moment. So obviously part of your role as payroll partner is to recruit into the team. So when you are looking for new staff members, what are the key qualities that you're looking for when you hire?
So you're talking sort of entry level, or what are you thinking?
Let's go with entry level to start, and then we can explore some of the other roles shortly.
I suppose bringing people who are pretty new into payroll, or with sort of a year or so experience, it really is around the behaviours and around how you would anticipate that person to interact with clients, how having that confidence as well to challenge back. It's very easy to just get data and put it into a system, but to really have the ability to analyse information, to do the problem solving piece, and talk to clients about the information that's being sent them and ask them questions around it, then that, I suppose I always describe it as a bit curiosity. I love people that have that level of curiosity, that they're not just going to take things as black and white. And also I really rate humility. I think people who say, I don't know everything, and have an awareness of their own gaps, those are the people that are going to be really proactive in their own development, because they know what they need to work on, and they know that, they know where they want to go with it. So yeah, that curiosity and humility would be two really good qualities for me.
I love that you didn't focus there on technical knowledge, because obviously that can be built up.
Absolutely.
And I always think you can't teach somebody passion, curiosity, humility. Those are sort of innate in somebody.
Yeah.
The technical stuff can come from qualifications, from training. So yeah, it's great to hear that that's what you look for when you're hiring in. That's entry level, but if we look more at sort of more managerial, what would you then be looking for when you're hiring?
I suppose it's their approach around leadership and in developing the teams, approach to change management. You know, I think change management has always been it's one of those corporate terms that we probably overuse a little bit too much, but there will always be projects to keep things moving and to stay up to date with things, even if it's just compliance driven. But beyond that, you know, changing systems, making things scalable, integrating across teams, that all of those things need somebody that's going to have almost like a project manager style approach of organising and thinking about communication, thinking about how they're going to lead not only their own team, but talk to the wider organisation and the client base about any change and how that impacts them. So yeah, seeing that ability to sort of step above and think more strategically about how a change could impact multiple stakeholders is quite an important quality.
And you yourself are a leader. You mentioned leadership there as one of the skills you'd be looking for in your managerial team. On your path to becoming a payroll partner, what's been the best piece of leadership advice that you've received?
Probably back yourself. Yeah. So my boss basically just said that a lot to me. It was just, you know, if you're doing the research, if you are building the strong business case, if you're comfortable with the work that you've put in the first instance, just back yourself, because you're doing the right thing for the right reasons. And obviously always remain open to challenge. I think that's also very, very important. But having that confidence to follow through with the plan and to deliver against that plan, you've got to be able to back yourself on that.
I love how effective and powerful just 2 words is. That's a brilliant piece of advice. And I'm glad you listened to it. So in your opinion, what makes the difference between a good payroll professional and a fantastic payroll professional?
Oh, that's so hard, because I just think almost the profession is too wide to say what would be good and what would be fantastic. Because there are lots of payroll professionals that will say, I absolutely love processing payrolls. That's where I want my day to focus on. And those people are great at customer service. Those people are great at attention to detail. And there'll be payroll professionals out there that are working in systems and, will need to be IT minded and all of the things that surround that. So it's a tricky one. I suppose what separates people in a general sense is that passion. What is really driving you to get up in the morning and to do your role really well, whatever sort of facet of payroll that you're working in. And if you know what that is and you're connected to that, then you're probably going to deliver your best outcome.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a bit of a theme here, Sam. So payroll isn't just a one size fits all. I've asked you a couple of questions about different clients, and, payrolls for different clients vary, as you've said. And the roles that are available in payroll, like you say, are so varied. So I think what we're seeing is, like I say, there's not a one size fits all for payroll. And that's something that we're trying to shine a spotlight on at the CIPP, because, as I've said, I think outside of the industry, there is this misconception that it is just a very linear career path, but we know that it isn't. You've mentioned within that software and processing, software development and payroll processing, they're 2 very different things already. So yeah.
Yeah, if I just look at what I've done, I've done a lot of the academic side of things, so understanding the technical policy, it's the stakeholder relationships, it's building your network, it's project management, it's IT systems, software. There's so many different elements to the industry that you can get involved in, and it's following that passion to do it.
And you mentioned there you've had lots of different sort of roles and responsibilities in the industry. You were previously the policy lead and my boss at the CIPP. So how do you think your time in that role has helped you in your current position?
Massively. I'm so pleased that I went into the CIPP and did that role, because I think what it really showed me is the sort of elements around marketing and the elements around, well, the power of the network as well, the payroll network. I've massively built that through working with the CIPP and since. But thinking about payrolling, I suppose that the commercial elements of it as well. When you're in-house and running a payroll for a large business, you are quite often seen as and treated as a cost centre, and you're a necessary must-have, and you have to fight quite a lot for that visibility and making sure that the value is seen there. But in other areas of payroll, you are generating profit, you are educating, as in the CIPP. There are lots of different things that you can do within the industry, and the CIPP just give me a real good view of all the different facets that I could get involved in. But definitely the sort of the power of the network and the people that I've met through the CIPP, yourself very much included, Laura. That's been my biggest takeaway, I think.
So I want to go back to, sorry, I'm flitting around a little bit here, but overseeing the team. So I'm sure there are periods of high pressure when payrolls have got to be done for multiple clients. So how do you support the team in those periods of high pressure and potentially stress?
I think really it is mostly around how do we do that proactively. So looking at schedules, looking at when information is due in, making sure that individual allocations feel reasonable and feel achievable for the team. Because if we don't do that proactive piece, we're going to end up in that reactive environment of absolute chaos. And the aim is that, we never get there. Obviously, we have curveballs, we have levers, we have unplanned absence and things like that. But it really is around how do we proactively plan around that. So the vast majority of our clients will have what we call like a second technician. So if we've got somebody who's off on planned or unplanned absence, you've got someone with that familiarity. So you still own your own portfolio, but you've got an awareness and understanding of some other clients. So without that, then we would hit panic stations because somebody's off and you can't deal with it. So most of the time we all of that tends to work, but a lot of it again is just talking to each other. We use Teams. The guys are in all different offices, but often with a payroll person within all the different offices. So it's keeping that communication open as well, and just making sure that people know that they can escalate if they need some additional support.
And for your clients as well, it's great that you've got that secondary person, because in terms of the level of customer service you're offering, they've got somebody who's familiar with them, not coming in asking all the questions that they've already answered. So I think it's great that you do that at Dains.
Yeah, absolutely. It is worth its weight in gold, I have to say. Definitely.
So on a personal level, what's been your proudest moment to date, would you say?
Proudest moment?
Somebody did just appear in the Times, just to rejig your memory. You've got a few you can pick from, Sam.
I think for me, if I'm completely honest, some of my proudest moments, they're all driven by my team. You know, it's when I see people. So we've done some big systems implementations and changes over recent years. And I sit in meetings and talk to people about change and what's coming. And I've got guys who are looking at me with absolutely terrified eyes, going, "What are you doing to me, Sam? You know, I'm sending me for early retirement here." And then a year later, I see them just whizzing away on the system, you know, really happy. And it's just little things like that and going, "Oh my God, you know, do you realise what you are doing right now and what you've actually achieved?" Because when you see people that are genuinely, they've got that anxiety and they've got that fear of change and they come out the other side of it, then I think that those little moments are probably my proudest moments, because I feel like I've done a good job and I've done the right thing by the team and the clients. But yes, the times.
I love that your answer was so selfless, to be honest. And it is great that you like giving back. Again, that's a common theme I see from a lot of people in our industry. People are very thankful for the support they've had and they want to help other people to progress as well. That is another sort of common personality trait that I see in payroll professionals, and it does make it a really nice industry to work in.
It's a people industry, isn't it? And I think if you're not driven by the people element of it, then yeah, it probably isn't quite the right thing for you. But yeah, for me, it is about the team and wrapping your arms around them and seeing them develop as well.
I am going to come back to the Times thing though, sorry.
Oh God.
I edit a magazine, so to see you in the Times, I was like, yes, Sam, that is a major achievement. And I loved seeing payroll being mentioned in a national newspaper. A lot of the work we do at the CIPP is raising the profile of the profession, and you 100% did that with that appearance. So how did it feel when you saw yourself in the Times?
Yeah, I mean, it was great. Don't get me wrong. You know, I think it was obviously talking around the move to mandatory payroll and the benefits. So to be able to start to talk to a wider audience about the fact that this is it is a sizable shift. If that interim guidance is what HMRC commit to, then businesses have really got to start thinking about this sooner rather than later, looking at, you know, how they get that data together, how they send it over to their payroll processors. So it was good to flag that when it was very much a hidden topic, given all the noise of the budget.
Yeah, and given the coverage of the Times, hopefully an organisation or an employer has seen that article and it's prompted them to start taking action. Because as we say, it's not a small change, it's going to be huge.
Yeah, definitely.
So if somebody's watching or listening today and they aren't working in payroll at the moment, or they're at the very early stages of their payroll career, what one piece of advice would you give to them, Sam?
I suppose I'd go back to my earlier point. Just be curious. You know, there is a reason that payroll has so many big personalities and different roles, and that is because it's a great industry to work in, and there are some massive opportunities in the industry as well. So if you go into payroll and it feels a little bit black and white and it feels a little bit this is pretty straightforward, I feel like I've got the hang of it after 3 months, which I've definitely seen people go in and do that, just stay humble and be curious. And if you keep asking questions, you'll start to find those nuances, those complexities, the bigger projects and the bigger things to get involved in.
I think that is a great piece of advice, and hopefully anybody listening or watching today will take that on board. So we are coming to the end of our time together. I've really enjoyed it, Sam. So I need to ask you, which I know you're really looking forward to providing me the answer to. What question would you like to put to a future guest on the show, Sam?
I'm going to go a bit curveball. I'm not going to go payroll entirely.
Good.
I want to ask what brings you joy? What part of your professional or personal, what brings you joy?
I love that. That's a really good question. Thank you for today, Sam. It's been lovely chatting with you about all things Sam Johnson and payroll related.
Been fabulous. Thanks for having me.
And you know what to do. Hit subscribe or follow Behind the Button on your favourite podcast player. And if you're watching us on YouTube, tap the like button, drop us a comment, and make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. We've got lots more great guests lined up to tell their payroll stories. And we'd love to get questions, suggestions, and stories direct from you. Just email behindthebutton@cipp.org.uk. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.